The bathroom became my only safe place every day. For an entire month, I walked into the same bathroom, at the same time, following the same ritual. I would close the door of the last stall, sit on the toilet lid with my legs together, my arms crossed over my knees, and let the tears fall. No sound, no expression, just tears. A silent pain that rose from my chest and slid down my face like a wordless confession. That small, cold, white-tiled cubicle became the only place where I could truly exist. Where I didn't have to smile, hide, endure, or hold myself together. Where I could fall apart, even if only for a few minutes. It almost looked choreographed. Nearly always around 10:37 a.m. That was the time of day when the weight of everything began crushing me, but hadn't reached its peak yet. I knew that if I waited any longer, I wouldn't be able to contain it. So I'd grab my badge, walk down the hallway with firm steps as if on an important mission, and enter the bathroom. No one suspected. No one followed. It was just another bathroom break. And there, between toilets flushing, faucets dripping, and mirrors reflecting pieces of myself I no longer recognized, I fell apart every single day. I don't know exactly when it became routine. Maybe it started with one occasional tear, one fragile moment. But pain, when ignored, eventually screams louder. And in my case, it screamed through tears. In the beginning, I tried to hide it. I'd look at myself in the mirror, pat my cheeks, force the smile back. But over time, I just let it happen. The bathroom became my confessional, my room of pain, my only safe space. It's strange how such an impersonal place can become a refuge. The cold floor, the white walls, the sound of the air conditioning mixed with a leaking faucet. It should have been uncomfortable, but to me, it was familiar. I knew exactly how long I could stay there without raising suspicion. Knew which co-workers had fixed routines and which hours they avoided that floor. I even knew which stalls made less noise when the doors closed. Because people who cry in secret learn to hide with mastery. And it wasn't that I wanted to hide. I needed to. The outside world, the meeting room, the emails, the deadlines, the glances was a battlefield. And I had been losing for a long time. But no one could know. I was the impeccable professional, the one who delivered everything on time. The one who smiled in every meeting. The one who helped others breathe even when I no longer had air myself. And then came the bathroom. The only place where I didn't have to lie. Where I could let my face drop. Where my breathing didn't have to be controlled. Where my eyes could lose their shine for a few minutes without it compromising my entire identity. The pain had become my hidden routine. There were days when I thought I was getting better. That maybe it would be the last day of tears. That maybe I was recovering, but all it took was one harsh comment, one unfair feedback, one heavy silence in a meeting. And there I was again, door closed, tears falling, body shaking, and the same thought looping like a mantra. It isn't normal to cry in the bathroom every day, and still, I went back. The pain became a pattern, and that scared me, because deep down, I knew I wasn't okay, but it felt easier to keep going than to stop. Stopping meant admitting, asking for help, explaining, and that, at the time, felt impossible. I didn't want to be the one who couldn't handle it. I didn't want pity. I didn't want people to know that behind my good performance, a daily collapse was happening inside white-tiled walls. And more than anything, I didn't want to disappoint, because when people see you as strong, efficient, reliable, showing weakness feels like betrayal, a break in an invisible contract. I felt I owed the company, my colleagues, myself, the image of someone who could handle everything. And if that meant crying in secret every day, so be it. But slowly, that bathroom stopped being a refuge. It became a prison. I wasn't crying out of pain anymore. I cried from exhaustion, from anger, from shame. I cried because I no longer knew how to stop. Because even on nights of rest, my body didn't turn off. Because even on weekends, my mind anticipated Monday. I cried because somewhere inside me, I knew this is not a life. And even then, I went back, day after day, door closed, silence, tears, until one day, something changed. But that is another part of the story. How everything quietly began to fall apart. Destruction rarely arrives with sirens. It doesn't burst through the door with a scream, nor does it explode like in movies. Real destruction, the kind that corrodes from the inside, arrives quietly. It starts with small cracks, a heavy breath here, a longer sigh there, a strange urge to disappear in the middle of the workday, but you ignore it. You always ignore it. Because life must continue. Because bills don't understand collapse. Because no one applauds those who pause. With me, it happened just like that. First came the tiredness. Not the normal end of day fatigue, but a deep exhaustion that woke up with me. Sat beside me while I tried to work. Then the morning anxiety. Waking up with a racing heart. With the sense that something terrible was about to happen even when everything was seemingly under control. Then the mind began to fail. Little forgetfulness, lack of focus, simple tasks that turned into labyrinths. But I kept pretending everything was fine. Because I needed to. Because being strong was part of my identity. And deep down, I believed it was all just a phase. That I was exaggerating. That a good night's sleep would fix everything. But it never did. And each attempt to function normally was like putting makeup on an open wound. It looked better, but still hurt. The pressure began to feel heavier. Not just external, which was already a lot, but mainly internal. I demanded more of myself every second. Be faster. Be more organized. Be like before. But I was not like before. Something in me had changed. Something was breaking. And I pretended not to see. What hurt the most was noticing that no one else noticed. I walked into meetings in silence, walked out in silence, faked smiles, delivered everything on time, and nothing. No concerned glance, no genuine question. And even if someone had asked, what could I say? I cry every day in the office bathroom. Of course not. I smiled, said, I'm fine, just tired. The universal response of someone drowning who doesn't want to pull others down with them. Slowly, the crying became part of my schedule. I no longer fought it. I accepted it like a break. 10 minutes of tears, then wash my face, fix my makeup, reapply the smile. A ritual, a routine, a disguise. And as all habits do, it started to feel normal. Crying became part of the job, part of the package, part of the routine of someone with resilience, a pretty word used to describe those who suffer in silence. Despite all of it, despite every sign, I still believed the problem was me, that I was weak, that I had forgotten how to handle pressure, that I was disappointing everyone including myself, because no one ever taught me that this was illness, that the body speaks, that repeated crying is a language, that silence can be a cry for help. And so the days continued. I dragged myself through them with the skill of someone who has lived so long in survival mode they no longer know how to relax. I worked with my heart and white noise. I no longer felt pride or purpose, only the weight of endless survival. There was one specific day that marked me. My manager sent a Slack message. Can you review this document for me? Something simple. I already had 3 tasks piled up. I was exhausted, on the edge, but I replied, of course, I'll send it today. And the minute I hit send, I dropped everything and ran to the bathroom. Not because of the task, but because the simple act of replying kindly, with willingness, made me realize how much I was faking. How often I said yes while my body screamed no, how deeply I was betraying myself. In that cold cubicle, I realized something was already broken, that the crying wasn't just a reaction anymore. It was a symptom. The silence was killing me slowly, but no one saw it. Because when people see a smile, they don't imagine the chaos behind it. And I still smiled. The fake strength everyone admired outside those bathroom doors. I was an example. And ironically, that was what kept me trapped in that silent hell. You're amazing under pressure. The way you stay calm is admirable. I wish I were as organized as you. They sounded like compliments, but felt like chains, as if they forced me to maintain a facade I no longer had the strength to hold up. And the most painful part was knowing that I had created that image. I wore the armor. I built the character. I gave the world a version of me who smiled, solved everything, and never ever showed weakness. So even when everything was collapsing inside, I kept feeding the lie. I kept organizing office birthdays. I kept sending encouraging messages. I kept replying fast, even while crying between tasks. I kept existing as if I were whole. But the truth is I was in pieces. And every time someone complimented me, guilt crushed me. Because the praise was for a version of me that no longer existed. It was like acting in a role that had grown too big, a costume that squeezed and suffocated me, but that I couldn't take off. Because I was the strong one, the stable one, the one who handles everything. That label gave me identity, but also stripped me of my humanity. And like all lies lived for too long, it made me even more sick. There is no pain greater than being applauded while falling apart. No prison more cruel than being admired for a version of yourself that is killing you. I started feeling anger at myself, at people, at the system. Anger for being trapped in a narrative of strength. Anger for not being able to escape. Anger for believing that if I stopped, everything would collapse. And still, deep down, I believed the blame was mine. Some days, I went through the entire workday with a tight chest, a lump in my throat, a trapped scream. And at the end of the day, my boss would say, "Great job today." And I smiled, because saying anything else felt like admitting, "I'm not okay. I can't handle it. I need help." And those words felt impossible to say. People have an image of you, a projection, and any deviation from that image looks like weakness, drama, or worse, incompetence. So you learn to play the game, to hide, to perform, and you lose yourself day after day. The craziest part, I began using the crying routine as proof of strength, as if telling myself, if you can cry and still deliver everything, you're strong. I glorified my pain, used my suffering like a silent trophy, and that only sank me deeper. Even my breakdowns became scheduled. I knew exactly how long I could cry before someone noticed, how long it took to dry my tears, redo my makeup, reapply perfume. Everything was calculated, because even in pain, I was efficient. Even at rock bottom, I was productive, and no one saw it, because the mask was too perfect. But inside, I was screaming, begging for someone to see past my performance, for someone to say, it's okay not to be okay, for someone to break the cycle. But no one did, because no one knew. And I still didn't have the courage to tell them. So the next day, there I was again, coffee in hand, spreadsheets open, smile on, and the bathroom, waiting for me. The breaking point, when I couldn't hide any more. Collapse never announces itself. It doesn't knock, doesn't send a warning, doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives. And that day, it entered me like a storm, knocking down every fragile wall I was still desperately trying to hold up. What happened wasn't grand. It wasn't cinematic. It wasn't explosive. It was small, ordinary, a moment only I noticed until the whole world had to see it. It was a Tuesday. I remember the smell of cold coffee on my desk, the stack of papers, the white office lights flickering above me as if they were tired too. I remember the meeting scheduled for 2:00 p.m., the co-workers chatting, the barrage of Slack notifications, the feeling that my body was being sucked into a tight, shrinking space. But most of all, I remember the desperate desire to disappear. Not to die, just disappear. For a few minutes, just long enough to breathe. The morning dragged on, heavy and thick. I had already gone to the bathroom twice, both to cry in silence as I did every day. But something was different that day. Sharp, urgent. My body was restless, my mind unfocused, my heart beating irregularly as if it didn't know how to function. Still, I tried to keep my posture, discreet smile, steady voice, clinging to routine like someone clinging to driftwood in open water. At 2:02 p.m., the meeting started. I walked in with an automatic smile, one of those already born dead, sat in my usual chair, adjusted my hair, opened my laptop. Pretending was so ingrained that, for a few seconds, I almost fooled myself, until someone asked me to present a report, a simple report, one I had prepared myself. The first words came out, then, nothing. Silence hit me like a frozen wave. My voice vanished. I opened my mouth, nothing. Looked at the slide, nothing. The text might as well have been written in another language. Client names, dates, numbers, all gone. My breathing became shallow. A cold sweat ran down my back. My hands shook. I tried to inhale deeply, but it felt like there was no air anywhere. It was as if my body no longer fit me. "Are you okay?" someone asked, and that question destroyed me. No one knew. No one had any idea how tightly I had been holding myself together. No one imagined I cried every day in secret, that I barely slept, that I lived in constant alert, that the bathroom was the only place where I could be human. And now right there, everything I'd hidden for an entire month was seconds away from exploding in the middle of the room. The smile I tried to force trembled. My vision blurred. I felt my heartbeat pulsing in my throat. And for the first time since it all began, I couldn't stop the tears. They came. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. One single warm line down my face. A line that exposed everything no one had ever seen. a line that marked the end of my resistance. I stood up abruptly. No thinking, no explaining, no apology. I walked out fast, almost tripping. The voices behind me sounded distant, underwater. I reached the bathroom, closed the door, and collapsed. But this time, I couldn't be silent. The crying came out in sobs, deep, guttural, years of pain breaking through the cracks. I cried like someone who finally dropped a heavy suitcase they carried alone for far too long. When I opened the door again, the world had already noticed. A coworker waited outside. Not insistent, not intrusive, just looking, scared. He didn't ask questions. He simply said, "Go home." And for the first time, I listened. I left. Without grabbing my stuff, without answering messages, without trying to save my image. And when I got home, still trembling, my whole body aching, I realized what had happened. The collapse wasn't a failure. It was the only truthful act I had managed in months. It was my body saying, "Stop." It was my mind begging, "I can't anymore." I cried in the bathroom every day for a month, but that day, I cried there for the last time in secret. From that door onward, the truth was out. And there was no going back. The forced pause and the difficult art of relearning how to exist the day after the collapse felt like another world. I woke up without an alarm, without rushing, without a meeting waiting for me. But I also woke up with a strange weight in my chest, as if something had been ripped out of me. The medical leave didn't feel like relief, it felt like shock, like someone yanked the handbrake of a car going 140 kilometers per hour. My body stopped, but my mind kept racing. I didn't know what to do with silence, with free hours, with myself. The first days were chaotic. My body finally crashed. I slept too much or not at all. I cried over small things. I felt weird pains. My chest creaked like an old door. My mind felt like a room full of disconnected wires. But above everything was guilt, loud, invasive, relentless. Guilt for not working. Guilt for letting my team down. Guilt for not being strong enough. Guilt for existing in pause. It felt like grieving a version of myself I spent years building, the unstoppable one, the one who handled everything, the one who smiled at the right time, the one who cried in secret but still showed up polished on the outside. That part of me was dying, and even though she had hurt me deeply, I didn't know who I was without her. Therapy entered at that moment like a door I had been terrified to open. I sat in the chair, hands shaking as if confessing a crime. I told her about the collapse, the bathroom, the month of tears. She didn't look shocked. She didn't pity me. She simply looked at me like she had seen that story 1,000 times. And she said, "You didn't fail. You survived for as long as you could." Those words, spoken softly, shattered me more than any meeting ever had. Slowly, I learned that burnout wasn't weakness. It was too much pressure, too much responsibility, too much silence. It wasn't an individual flaw. It was a symptom of a broken system. Not being dramatic, not being lazy, not being fragile. It was my body protecting me from dying of exhaustion. Relearning how to exist meant relearning everything. The simplest things: eating slowly, breathing deeply, showering without rushing, waking up without opening email, letting a message stay unanswered, sitting in silence without feeling useless. Every pause was a psychological battle. Every rest felt like a confrontation with the belief that value comes from productivity. But with time, something shifted, softly, like the first light after a long night. My body felt less tense, my thoughts less foggy, the pressure in my chest eased, the crying became less frequent. I started wanting small things again: music, coffee, walking without purpose. I started wanting to exist, not just survive, and I realized the pause wasn't punishment, it was healing. It was the thing life had never allowed me to have, the thing I never had the courage to ask for, the thing I needed to become someone other than a tired machine trying not to disappoint. When the month of leave was over, one thing was clear: I couldn't return to who I had been. Not the person who cried in the bathroom, not the one who stayed silent, not the one who mistook effort for worth. I needed to be reborn slowly, gently, truthfully. It wasn't about returning to work. It was about returning to myself. And for the first time, I was willing. Today, I cry, but not in secret anymore. Recovery has no milestone, no symbolic moment, no finish line telling you, "You're back." It comes in waves, in ups and downs, in small flashes of clarity amid the confusion. For me, clarity arrived on a simple morning with no big revelation. I woke up and wanted to open the window, not out of obligation, not to pretend I was okay, but because, for the first time in a long time, the light didn't hurt me. That's when I realized something was changing. I wasn't crying every day anymore. I wasn't waking up with the weight of the world on my chest. I didn't tremble when notifications appeared. I still had fears, insecurities, doubts, trauma, but I was alive again, not on autopilot, not on the edge of collapse, not trapped inside a cold bathroom stall. I was slowly reclaiming the space inside myself, and with that new way of living came something powerful. The courage to talk. It started with people close to me, a friend asking why I had disappeared, a coworker saying I seemed distant, another saying she admired my strength, and for the first time, I answered honestly, not with automated phrases, not with hollow smiles, not with the mask of "I'm fine." I told the truth. I wasn't okay, and I needed to stop. The reactions surprised me. No one pulled away. No one judged me. No one diminished me. Instead, many shared their own pain, their own bathroom trips, their own silent collapses, because deep down, so many people are surviving behind closed doors, waiting for someone to say, "Me too." That's when I understood. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's language. It's bridge. It's medicine. It's what connects us. I spent so long hiding my cracks that I forgot the light enters through them. Today, I see the signs before the storm. When my chest tightens, I stop. When my mind races, I rest. When my body asks for pause, I listen. And when emotion comes, I let it come. I don't hide. I don't pretend. I don't run to the bathroom to cry silently. If I cry today, it's because I'm alive. I cry in the living room, on the couch, on the phone with someone I love. I cry because I learned that feeling doesn't make me less capable, less professional, less strong. It makes me human. It makes me whole. I've learned to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, to stop carrying what isn't mine, to stop letting others' expectations define my worth, because now I know I exist beyond performance. I am worth more than productivity. I am not a machine and never should have tried to be. And the bathroom, sometimes I still walk past it, at work, at events, in public places, and every time I see that door, something inside me stirs. Not sadness, not trauma, but respect, because inside that cold cubicle, I allowed myself to feel for the first time in a world that expected me to be still. There, I dropped all the tears my body couldn't hold anymore. There, I discovered something was terribly wrong and that I needed to save myself. Today, the bathroom is not my refuge. I am the woman who no longer cries in secret. The woman who learned to be honest with herself. The woman who saved her own life when the world didn't notice she was falling apart. And if there's anything I carry from this entire story, anything I keep like an invisible tattoo, it's this. The body warns, the heart warns, silence warns, and crying is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign that you're still fighting. Today, I still cry when I need to, but never again. Behind a locked door, the month I learned not to die in silence. If I could go back and look into the eyes of the version of me who cried every day in the office bathroom, I wouldn't tell her to be strong. I wouldn't tell her to hang on. I wouldn't say it was just a phase. I would tell her the only thing she truly needed to hear. You don't deserve to live like this. Because no one does. No one deserves to fake strength while their chest begs for help. No one deserves to smile while their soul bleeds. No one deserves to be praised for performance while falling apart backstage. No one deserves to get sick just to be seen. I thought that bathroom was my hiding place, but today, I see it was my mirror, the only place where the truth could stare back at me. Every day, the pain told me, "You're breaking," and I replied, "Just a little more," until a little more became collapse, until my body stopped for me, until my mind screamed for air in the only way it knew how. But I survived, and surviving changed me. Today, I am no longer the perfect employee who cried in silence. I am someone who listens to her body before it begs. Someone who knows productivity isn't worth her health. Someone who discovered that asking for help is an act of courage. Someone who finally understands that stopping isn't failing, it's saving yourself. If you read all of this and felt a familiar tightness in your chest, a lump in your throat, a memory of a similar bathroom, maybe it's time to look at yourself with gentleness. Maybe you also believed you had to endure, had to hide, had to pretend. But the truth is, you don't. Pain is not a flaw. Crying is not failure. Silence is not a prison. And most importantly, you are not alone. If this story found you at the right moment, then do what I couldn't for too long. Breathe. Let yourself feel. Let yourself stop. Let yourself exist beyond performance. Life is much bigger than a report, a feedback, a meeting, a badge. And if the bathroom at your job has become your only place to fall apart, maybe it's time to build a refuge inside yourself, a place where your truth fits, where your pain breathes, where your heart doesn't need permission to exist, because no one should cry in secret just to stay alive. If your job is killing you, maybe it's time to save yourself.